The subject of this video are Trump's recent statements about the US dollar's value against foreign currencies and how the USD conversion rates from foreign currencies impact investments made by US investors, US inflation, and GAAP reported profits of US multinationals with significant overseas operations. GAAP is simply an abbreviation for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles that U.S. corporations use to report earnings. Trump claimed on July 18th that only a dumb president would let the U.S. dollar slide in value against foreign currencies. Since the dollar was down about 10% in value during his second term when he made that statement, he was, in effect, admitting that he was a dumb president. I will link in the More section below my earlier video discussing that statement. But how can a self-described extremely stable genius with an IQ that is so high that it cannot be adequately measured by any existing IQ test, including the one for cognitive impairment that tests for dementia that Trump took at Walter Reed, be dumb? It's not possible for an extremely stable genius to be dumb. I would add that someone does not become a genius by stating over and over again that he is one and that he aced an IQ test. Trump would never admit he was a dumb president, or even that he is just overwhelmingly ignorant and unwilling to learn anything. So the only alternative explanation for his earlier statement is that he had no idea when he made it that the U.S. dollar was down about 10% in value against foreign currencies as measured in any U.S. dollar basket index. And that is such a very basic piece of information for any president to have and would have had prior to Trump being president. Someone must have told Trump that the dollar had lost value since his inauguration, close to 10%, as I said, using the US dollar index. So he was prepared for a question about this a few days later about whether the decline in the dollar's value was good for the United States. His reply on July 25th, and I will quote from it. Quote, "Well, you know, I'm a person that likes a strong dollar, but a weak dollar makes you a hell of a lot more money." End of quote. He then added the following that at least demonstrates that he now knows that a weak dollar is inflationary. Quote, "When you have a strong dollar, one thing happens. It sounds good, but you don't do any tourism. You can't sell anything. It's good for inflation. That's about it." End of quote. Those quotes are in a Newsweek article that I will cite in the More section below. He also falsely represented then during that his talk that he had eliminated inflation, a demonstrably false claim that he has made in the past as well. Annual core CPI, consumer price inflation, through the last monthly report, which was in June, was reported at 2.9%, plus 2.9%, up from 2.8% through the 12 months ending in May. And annual CPI was at 2.7% in June, jumping from a 2.4% annual rate through May. Those numbers are from his administration. I previously discussed I do not expect that the inflationary impact of both the weak dollar and the Trump tariff taxes to show up materially in inflation reports until later this year. And there are two fundamental reasons for that. The people that could afford to import product that they could hold in inventory for a long time did so before the tariff taxes took effect. And Many companies will only gradually increase the consumer price for their products to recoup the tariff tax. They want to avoid price shock all at once. A strong dollar does not eliminate tourism or exports, as he claims. And that's obvious. It's an obviously false statement. This is an example of why Trump's false and misleading statements will easily go over 100,000, in my opinion, over the 10-year period ending in January 2029. For those of us who are informed with accurate information, Trump rarely makes an accurate statement about anything. A weak dollar does make U.S. exporters more competitive, but as pointed out in that Newsweek article that I'm citing in the More section, the U.S. is dependent on consumer spending for GDP growth and imports far more products than it exports. Higher prices for products caused by Trump's tariff taxes and a weak dollar in combination are not a good thing for a consumer-led economy. It's a very bad thing. So a smart president would not diminish the importance of the inflationary impact of a weak dollar, nor claim that increasing tariffs will not have a long-term inflationary impact on U.S. consumer prices, which is what Trump does. And U.S. exports are now being boycotted by foreign consumers, particularly those in Canada who are understandably upset about the U.S. trying to destroy their economy with tariffs. And those include the 50% tariffs on the import and exports from Canada of steel and aluminum, and the soon-to-be 50% tariff tax on copper, along with all the other ones that he's already imposed or has threatened to impose. Trump called the boycott by Canadian consumers nasty. Canadian consumers just need to accept in Trump world that it is God's will carried out by the Messiah, chosen by God, strange as that may seem to some, that steel, copper, and aluminum exports need to be taxed by 50%. All are critical for Canadians' economy, and Trump is merely trying to do the Lord's work here on earth. Trump has caused a long-term shift in foreign citizens' view of the United States that will last for generations, I suspect, that will negatively impact exports from the U.S. and sales by U.S. domiciled companies that are recognized as such by foreign consumers. But those would be sales from foreign subsidiaries, like maybe Starbucks in Canada or McDonald's in Canada, for example. Trump is viewed by an increasing number of foreign consumers as the quintessential ugly American and an obvious mean-spirited and obnoxious bully. I mentioned in a recent video that the weak dollar improves GAAP reported earnings for U.S. multinationals whose earnings in a foreign currency increase when there is an accounting conversion back into U.S. dollars, when that foreign currency is strengthening in value against the dollar. This is usually a fictional increase in earnings created by the GAAP accounting. The money is infrequently actually converted back into U.S. dollars. There was a considerable amount of repatriation of foreign earnings in response to a tax law change in 2017. What is important for U.S. investors is not the accounting conversion of those earnings from euros, British pounds, or some other foreign currency into U.S. dollars, but whether the profits in constant currencies are rising due to an increase in sales and profit margins. The weakness in the U.S. dollar is helping me since I own foreign stocks and currencies, foreign currencies whose value has risen as the dollar has weakened. When you buy an ADR, American Depository Receipt, representing ownership of a foreign stock held by a custodian like the Bank of New York, The U.S. price will be determined by taking the price in the foreign currency that is traded on the foreign stock exchange and then converting it back into U.S. dollars. So an ADR priced in U.S. dollars will outperform the same shares priced in a foreign currency when the dollar is falling against the foreign currency. The foreign ordinary shares priced in a foreign currency buys more U.S. dollars in that scenario. And the dividend yield would be increasing for as long as that trend continues of a weak dollar, since the dividend paid in a foreign currency when converted back into U.S. dollars would be buying more U.S. dollars. The reverse is true when the dollar is rising in value against a security priced in a foreign currency. You can see how a weak dollar can impact an ADR return for a U.S. investor by comparing the same shares priced in a foreign currency by going to the Marketwatch website, enter a symbol for a foreign ADR, click the chart tab, and then enter the ADR symbol and the symbol for the ordinary shares. I will use Sanofi as an example, whose ordinary shares are priced in euros. That has been rising against the U.S. dollar almost 10% for the last 6 months now. I entered the ADR symbol, which is SNY, and clicked the chart and for that symbol, selected 6 months as the time period, and in the box that labeled compare, quote, compare, end of quote, I entered the ordinary stock symbol, FR colon SAN, all runs together. There is a blue line for the ADR, which shows a 3.9% decline through July 25th over that past 6 months when the euro was rising in value against the dollar, while the ordinary shares priced in euros was down 12.9%. The difference is the exchange rate. The strong euro against the dollar over the past 6 months has caused the USD priced ADR shares to decline about 10% less than the ordinary shares. I have a small ball position in Sony, which I repeatedly trade over the years, so I have lost less than the owner of the same shares that were bought using euros on the Paris Euronet exchange. This is important to understand even if you do not buy securities on foreign exchanges and limit yourself to USD priced ADRs. The impact on me when I buy securities, for example, on the Toronto exchange using my Canadian dollars is different. The impact would be about the same only if I converted US dollars into Canadian dollars when the security was bought and then converted the proceeds back on the day the security was sold with the proceeds converted back from Canadian dollars to USDs. I do neither. The conversion from USDs to purchase Canadian dollars would incur a commission. And so I haven't actually bought any Canadian dollars using US dollars in well over a decade. I have an existing Canadian dollar position around 61,000 CADs and will fund any purchases with those CADs that I make on the Toronto exchange, and the sales proceeds will be kept in CADs. The tax consequences for me occurs when I sell CADs to buy a security in Toronto, which will have a US dollar cost basis, or exchange CADs for USDs with the latter giving me more control over the profit and losses due to the currency exchange rates. For me, when buying foreign securities using a foreign currency, the way I trade them, the conversion values impact what I pay in U.S. taxes, a complicated subject. Ideally, I want the U.S. dollar to decline in value during my ownership period, since that would result in a lower U.S. tax on my Canadian dollar profit. I have had examples in the past when the Canadian dollar has fallen in value from the date of purchase to the date of sale against the US dollar, and a CAD profit of several $100s was turned into a nominal gain. One example was like maybe $400 CAD profit into a $6 USD reported taxable gain. And a few have even gone from Canadian dollar profits into USD reportable losses. Having the CAD rise during my period of ownership when I buy the security on the Toronto exchange or any other foreign exchange would increase my taxes paid on the profit without changing the amount of the foreign currency that I own.